So you and I have known people who went to prison and came out the other end Islamic.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I've also known some Islamic people, particularly, I think if you listen to like some real old podcasts we did, we talk about Connie Grimes, who was a Catholic worker who died, but she was a huge friend of the Islamic community. And through her, I met a lot of like Islamic immigrants, right? And in particular, I used to like walk into this cafe and they would just feed me for free just because I knew Connie, Catholic worker,
That's
right?
Cool. Yeah.
And this guy was Ethiopian and they hated prison Islam. Because like guys would come out of prison and want to go to all these Islamic cafes, and these guys are like, man, we share nothing with these guys.
Yeah.
You know? And but like I know that when we met like these guys who we knew from the street who went in to prison and got Islam, it was kind of positive.
Yeah.
And it was positive because you had this kid without a dad who had no code in life, no structure.
Yeah.
And he'd kind of been put through this little boot camp with a code that was prison Islam, right?
Yeah.
It said, here's what women do. Here's what men do. Here's your job. You don't drink. You don't do this. Boom. You know?
Yeah. I just want to say the means to getting these guys to become like the converting is kind of maybe manipulative, right? But yeah, exactly. It's like the two things that I saw, it's like you get a code and you get brotherhood, which is also interesting about gangs, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And as a missionary, I'm like, well, shoot, Christianity can kick your butt if you want it to.
Yeah.
But because we've soft pedaled morality so much, we weren't able to offer these guys a code, even though they were very familiar with Christians.
Yeah.
They'd never seen it as like a hardcore thing they could apply themselves to.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so it kind of was pointing at a failure of our own like evangelization and religion that they were becoming prison Islam. Right. But by the way, just for everyone who doesn't know this, like I've been like in the post office in Southeast DC, and women will walk in with burqas.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, did some like Afghani refugees come in and they're wearing their burqas? And then you start hearing these women cuss like sailors, and you're like,
and you see their nails.
Right. These are just ladies from Southeast DC who like, you probably married some guy who was prison Islam and they decided to max out and go burqa, you know?
Yeah.
And it's interesting and kind of funny, but so there's this need for a code. And I kind of think that that's also why we're seeing this great moment of traditional Latin Mass Catholicism, is because it has kind of like kept the code. Yeah. You know, whereas kind of the more mainstream Catholicism hasn't emphasized like, hey, it needs to be hardcore. There needs to be hardcore morality. You have to make these sacrifices. You got to have, you know, it's like they've kind of like more stuck to the code, and we're hungry for the code. And that's why it's very attractive.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And maybe there's been like an over accommodation and an over nuancing, you know, where it's just like, is it or is it not, you know?
I think there definitely has been. I've been listening to some guys who I kind of admire because of what they do politically, but they're also traditional Latin Mass guys. And I was listening to them and I was thinking, you have more than the average person realized how off track this like radical progressivism is. And it's like good for you, right? And then you've also realized that Catholicism had something in it far beyond what society ever told you it did. Like good for you, right? Yeah. And then you also think Catholicism might be the antidote for what you see as going wrong. Also not a bad conclusion, right? And then they see within Catholicism, the traditional Latin Mass as the most perfect, like, tradition to counter the problem that we have, I believe, you know, and I don't want to trivialize their spirituality to say there's not saying authentically, deeply spiritual there, but like, there's also this, like, it fits really well right now. Right. Yeah. And when I think of that, I think like, I kind of keep thinking every logical step in their, like, why they like are both kind of right on and then ended up in the traditional Latin Mass. I think yes. Right. Like I would kind of like all the little decisions they make. Yeah. But at the end of the day, what I want is I want the church fathers. I want scripture. I want the dynamite of Christ to be fully exposed. I think that Vatican II was designed to do that. I think the vernacular was designed to do that. And I think that what we have here is trappings, you know, like you have accidentals. I don't ever see a church father saying that the more piously you receive communion, that'll make you a saint. Right. You know, like you should piously receive communion. Like that's like not in debate, you know? Yeah. But like that is not the sinner. The sinner is love. Yeah. you know?
Yeah. And the trappings can be a distraction, you know, like.
I think that's where we're at. And I think that's why you see these policies coming out, is because people who know it's a distraction are making policies, and it could be ham-fisted. I don't know that these policies are good policies, but I know why they're trying. You know, like why they're trying to like limit ad orientem or all of these little things is because these accidentals become the core and become like the flag of, you know, a religious movement that's actually not right. You know, it's not at the core of love.
But it's too bad because some of it is like quite beautiful. Yeah,
it is. And I also want to say, like, I want to acknowledge all the problems of like a false Christianity that can be too liberal while thinking this is not the answer also. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.